everyone is not everyone is over the idea that there are real evil forces, or for that matter, that that they're too old to celebrate Halloween. So it was 2 weeks ago. I was standing at this gas station counter, and there were flyers for Universal Studios Spooky World, which is a thing out here. All the parks have big Halloween affairs, and good parties, sugar highs, cute kids with inflamed imaginations. But when the high school kid at the register, seeing me thinking about Halloween, innocently said, "What are you going as this year?" I found myself, this was before I picked my costume, and anxious and a little bit unable to speak. Am I going this year? Where am I going this year? It took me a second to realize she wasn't talking about Spooky World as much as Halloween. And I said, maybe this is the year I'm too old to dress up. I don't know. I decided I would be Bob Ross, the famous soft-spoken painter. Just then I remembered the coiffed TV preacher. I'm still standing in the store, reminding me that haunted houses and witch costumes are an open invitation for Satan. And I kind of drifted off in my ADHD way and was sort of inefficiently kind of standing there waiting to pay. And I realized that I'm, kind of no more interested in letting the fundamentalists ever get the last word on Halloween in than I am over getting dressed up. And even though I was stirred there for a minute. But what the TV preacher really got me thinking about was how little we know about how religiously synchronistic we are, and at risk of being critical to other religious practices, how blind we are to all the great religious truth that, usually more trick than treat. We're all religiously more thieves than we really are anything else. So on this Halloween, this holiday of tricksters and mischief, I'm going to remind us that we're all thieves. And religion is the process of walking around the historical neighborhood of cultures and taking a little, sometimes gently, sadly, historically, just as often aggressively, and putting other people's ideas in our own candy bag. Nearly everyone's religious heritage is about stealing your neighbor's gods and images and morphing them into something else and then egging their statues as thanks for the idea, if not killing people and critiquing them for not believing the way you do. So if I could crawl out on one of those Daystar stages with the TV preacher, I would like to tell the fundamentalist audiences that the truth is much more boring than witches bad, angels good. People celebrate Halloween, All Souls Day, and even the Day of the Dead not because of Satan, but because of syncretism. Syncretism is, by loose definition, the process by which, and the fact that religious traditions fuse and steal or borrow ideas and symbols from each other all the time. And this takes place wittingly, it takes place unconsciously, it's aggressive sometimes, it's passive as well. It's important to know this for all that it's practiced, because no religion wants to stake its authority on ideas that it borrowed from a lost civilization, a generation, or 2 centuries ago. We rarely ever, except in liberal churches, talk about borrowing, or worry about borrowing, or worry about borrowing too much. You would never hear a religion say, or a sermon say, we stole that from the Persians. But the truth is, any real view of history might lead one to think that theft is arguably the only religious tradition that there is. And I think that UUs might, because of its pervasiveness, do well to celebrate a little of that inevitable truth. So Halloween, I think, is the best example of this. Christmas is not far behind. Halloween, as we know, is a time when kids roam the streets looking for candy, their imaginations trained to look over their shoulders for ghosts and witches. And this holiday, as we all know, probably most immediately traces its roots to the annual feast of the ancestors that European pagans practiced in multiple forms. And those celebrations varied some over time, but are best probably summarized by Samhain, the ancient Celts of Ireland, Britain, and northern France, Samhain was a point on the seasonal calendar when the death of the growing season was mourned and a new year was invited in. It's also a time when, sort of across the northern hemisphere, when people believed spirits could pass through subterranean gateways in the earth and roam the surface, feasting with their other relatives and bestowing blessings from the other world. It's a holiday that has roots more than 5,000 years old. If you don't believe me, ritually this welcoming home the spirits of ancestors during Samhain was done by burning candles inside hollowed-out gourds, leaving bowls of treats for them from the harvest. They didn't have M&Ms. And by dressing up in costumes. Sound familiar? Before they were, in our day, these pagans either demonized or demoted in something of a game for children. These rituals were in various times incorporated into the Christian rites. Likewise, the Day of the Dead rituals practiced in Mexico that fall at this time can be extended back in time to the concepts of death and the afterlife from the Olmec, Toltec, Maya, and Aztec cultures. So both sides of the Atlantic are practicing this reinterpretation of these kind of ancient, primeval, death meets life moments. When conquering Europeans introduced Christianity, or imposed Christianity as it may be, to the native cultures, its rituals and practices became synthesized with traditional indigenous beliefs pretty freely. All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day are holy days celebrated in all Catholic countries, and the customs and practices of Dios de los Muertos is itself a development of that fusion itself. So that holiday is influenced from the Christian side too. During Dios de los Muertos, people believe that the souls of the dead return to earth for 2 days of the year. On All Saints' Day, it's the tradition that the spirits of the little angels and the children roam. And on the next day, All Souls' Day, it's believed that the spirits of adults return, so the kids come back first. During Los Dios de los Muertos, families participate in these construction of these altars designed to honor loved ones and create skeleton figures that depict their family members. It's an interesting mix of, like, as you probably know, these sort of old patterns and then incorporating new things, like putting tequila up on the altar and stuff. Candy and incense and candles and flowers and pictures of saints and the favorite food and drink of the deceased are offered as a tempting trail map for the spirits of the dead to find their way home. In the European American tradition, All Souls' Day is a reminder that the church militant, this is the Christian version of it, so that's All Souls' Day. The church militant, which are people who are alive now, the Christians alive now, and the church triumphant, those who've died in the flesh, as it said, are all come together in the body of Christ. So it's a Christian version of Samhain in a way. More than any other day, All Saints' Day is a day when it's thought that the great chain of witnesses in that Christian monotheistic story, from Abraham to the latest baptized Christian, are gathered together as a sort of cloud of witnesses. Unlike most Christian holidays, it's not only a day to remember Jesus, but the Christians that came before. So, what's kind of ironic, given the remarks of the conservative Christian preacher on the TV 2.5 weeks ago, is that the blurred tradition of Halloween we celebrate now might arguably only have survived because in the church's effort to convince the European Celts and the Druids to adopt Christianity, adopted, you could read, usurped, the pagan Feast of the Dead as an annual remembrance of the spiritual ancestors and made thus All Saints' Day. So, in all the traditions, it is believed that the veils between the spirit realm and the physical are thinnest at this time, and allowing us to visit with those who've passed on. If you think that the Halloween we celebrate is a unique case of theft and reinterpretation, you might consider that not only Halloween, but Groundhog Day and Esther, which was Easter, which was Esther, modern May Day celebrations, and Christmas all have pagan roots too. So if the question many pagans ask is to whether Christians deliberately stole pagan holidays, well, the answer is yes and no. Certainly much of it was calculated, and at times there was a brutal imposition at risk of death. But the answer is also no, in the sense that religious traditions shift slowly and unconsciously all the time anyway. So to me, the more important message than the morality of any one act of syncretism is that that is how we work. Buddhists steal from Hindus, of course, Muslims from Christians, Christians from Jews, Jews from Babylonians, and, well, I'm not that smart, all down the line. As Linda McGraw notes in her sermon, A Celebration of the Changing Season, the vestiges of pagan religion and Christian symbols are undeniable. Egyptian sun discs became the halos of the Catholic saints, and pictograms of Isis nursing her miraculously conceived son Horus became the blueprint of our modern images and the very exact way the Virgin Mary and the baby Jesus are often pictured. In virtually all elements of the Catholic ritual, the mitre, the altar, the doxology that we just read, the communion, the act of God-eating were taken directly from the early pagan mystery faiths. So I think the way we should think about it is that if a religious ritual or practice has survived long enough to be a regular part of any cultural tradition, it probably has done so because it taps into some deep universal human need. Syncretism exists, syncretism works, because deep religious needs always manifest themselves somehow into holiday and ritual. And because culture is always changing, those rituals are always shifting. This is not designed to be an apologetic. Certainly the church appropriated All Souls Day from Samhain, and particularly during the Middle Ages, when Christianity spread around Europe, it took, in the first century, grand sweeps of Jewish practices were incorporated into Christianity and all down the line. So I kind of had this vision I wanted to hunt down with as much love as I could muster, ask my fellow fundamentalist, fellow preacher if he was disturbed that the holiest of Christian holidays, Easter, was successful in part because it usurped the name of a pagan spring fertility goddess, Estra. Or I wanted to ask if he felt the need to scold Abraham, the father of monotheism, because as he was prone to being from a polytheistic culture, Abraham is one of the first monotheists, as you probably know, caught with the word God. Abraham is caught with the word gods in his mouth from time to time, even in the Bible. To miss that fundamentally all holidays and religions work like this by process of theft and reblending is to miss that really all truth and customs work this way. And in a way, it's the way all life works. It's the way the Cambrian Revolution spread. From elementary school teachers, sports, scientific discovery, and religion, everything borrows and steals from other images. Think about just a simple term. Pam will appreciate this, or all of us will. The term, how your term the footprint has been translated. Think of when someone asks what your footprint is, 2 generations ago, a generation ago even, it would have been an entirely different thing than now. If you're trying to understand your way in the world, you use what you find. We all do. And watching the way your neighbor coaxes the dog inside when they escape is not much different, really, than stealing an idea or two about how to coax the good fortune of fate from your version of the divine, or as a technique to remember or honor your dead grandmother, or to convince yourself that you will even be remembered. Which leads me back to the statement that syncretism is in fact the only religion there really is. And in not knowing that has led to a great deal of foolishness and a lot of murder. Okay, religious lecture mostly over. I think there's a deeper, less competitive way everyone can approach this great truth. So for me, if the world of religion, looking over your neighbor's shoulder is plagiarism or cheating is the norm, then actually borrowing is fine. It's stealing your neighbor's homework and then in turn beating them up at recess when they have not gone along with your changes. That's the problem. So I'm obviously overstating a theoretical fact. But ask yourself, what would the world be like if Jews and Christians and Muslims, just to pick one strain of faith, were to be at peace about all that was borrowed or stolen from each other? The way Western religious traditions should really relate to one another is don't worry about it, take it, use it in your own way. It is our heritage as you use and our duty as tolerant, open minded people, which is so high on our hierarchy of values, to be vigilant and to be knowledgeable about the very eclectic way that all religions, traditions have come together. And what that with one more layer means, ask yourself, we all need to ask ourselves, if God existed and cared about us, would that cosmic personality allow for such an infinite variety of expressions of deep sentiment and feeling if only one were correct? Only one was the way to be? It's almost impossible when you put it in those terms. So relax and eat your candy and work and pause to feel the veil a little thinner. And that to me makes celebrating Halloween a little more deeply important than what you dress up as. Amen. Amen. Thoughts? Not all at once. Okay, we're going to sing along with The World is One World. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir sometimes does this buffering thing too. It's sort of a thing now.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I can't hear the hymn.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's buffering. Do you guys want to wait or keep going?
Let's move on.
Yeah, all right.
I think we learned that our world is one world.
Indeed.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Steve. One of my favorite lines from Walt Whitman is from the poem, "The Child Goes Forth Every Day." And one of the lines is, the sense of what is real.
Mm.
And how do we know what is real without these absorbed values and belief systems that we somehow absorb as children? And then we have them for the rest of our lives without even realizing that we have them. So all of these symbolic systems of belief are deeply imbued. And we have to become, I think it's our responsibility to examine those and decide for ourselves what is real.
Yes, and to be gentle about that
Exactly. I agree.
and humble.
Yeah, I've been learning more about the Puritans recently.
Mm-hmm.
They were basically like the Taliban.
Yeah.
And I used to feel proud that I was descended from the Mayflower, and now I'm not so sure.
Ron, I was going to offer that if you ever have any question about what the truth is, just ask me and I'll tell you.
I'm sure you will, Roy.
That'll help out. That's right. Yeah.
I want to tell you that Mysteria has the answers to every question. And also the candy. Welcome to my world.
Right.
I heard the voice before I saw the face. That was a little disconcerting there, Pam. I thought we were being bombed or whatever they call it.
Dan, speaking of belief systems, don't feel that you need to wear a mask to keep us safe.
We just finished a service here that I was doing tech for, so I don't know what's flying around this sanctuary.
Okay.
Now everybody's gone. It's probably okay.
Good to see your face, Dan.
I need to get my booster.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. There still is, as far as I know, a thing called religious forums that has like a forum for all the religions in the world, every sect, everything, and people can talk to each other. And the Unitarian Universalists were put under the syncretic category.
Oh, were they? Wow.
That's the first place I heard about syncreticism.
Well, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, there were two other religions in there too, and I can't remember. One was sort of it wasn't the ethical culture, but it was something else.
Baha'is
some good debates there.
Baha'is are almost syncretistic.
On the surface.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, because that's the big appeal. When you see the Baha'i temple in Wilmette, they have on each pillar of this temple that's like we used to call God's orange squeezer. At the base is the backward swastika of
Hinduism.
And then it goes up through the Jewish star, and then the cross, and then the moon of Islam, and then the 9 stars of Baha'i.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that is the appeal. I mean, they're basically saying all religions are one.
Yeah.
Right.
But the difference is they're all one because the infallible prophet Baha'u'llah said so. It's a little different,
Yep.
But
well,
it is.
UUs have come to the very interesting and novel position that our religiosity is rooted in, our values and principles are rooted more in what we don't know than what we do. And most people don't go that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we really are we have vacated, for the most part, we've vacated making theological statements in order to be broad-armed and welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
We'll make valuative ones, but we do not make supernatural ones.
I was thinking about what you said in terms of cultural misappropriation.
Mhm.
because a lot of artists, a lot of musicians especially, who are, get quasi called out for cultural misappropriation, there's a backlash going, what you said, everybody steals from everybody. It's what human beings do.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't want to make an effort to like acknowledge the roots of rhythm and blues,
Right.
but it doesn't mean you can't play that bass riff because you're a European, or whatever.
Or that Duke Ellington can't play the piano because it's a European instrument invented by Germans.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. True.
What's the name of your icon, Pamela?
Mysteria to you, Dan.
I really miss the being able to dress up.
Oh,
It was fun, and
dress up
we-
for Halloween. Oh,
my elementary school on Halloween, everybody dressed up, and there was a little auditorium, and you'd walk across the stage and show everybody else your costume, and then you'd sit in the audience, watch everybody else's costume. It was your moment in the sun. That's Bob Ross.
has a long history. She's quite the lady. And she meets everyone at the door.
I bet.
What's your name?
I thought you were Father Nature or something when I first knew you.
I'm Bob Ross.
Have you seen the documentary about all the fighting over his heritage, over his inheritance or something?
Yes, I have not, but I know that it exists. Yeah. That's a good witch, Pam.
You like that one?
I do. Well, there we are.
We were
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
we were Zooming with my grandchildren yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
My granddaughter, who is 12, created a giant paper mache beetle with a big mouth. It's like almost as big as she is, and she's going to wear it today.
E.O. Wilson was asked, you know a lot about nature, and what do you think nature tells us about what God's like? And E.O. Wilson said, if there's a God, that God likes beetles. That was his response.
There's a lot of them. And ticks.
And ticks.
On that note, I have to go. Thank you very much.
And dogs.
And dogs.
Happy
Yeah.
Halloween, everybody.
Yeah.
Did you get my message?
Be well, Ron.
Dan, do you have a topic for next week?
I believe it is
Putting you on
bearing
the spot
witness.
tonight.
Bearing
Is what?
witness.
Bearing witness.
Witness. Okay.
Bearing witness.
I think.
All right. Let me
Yeah.
know and I'll let
You might
everybody
come up
else.
with a more clever title. We'll see.
All right. Let's close this. Let's close us down. Let's do our closing things. What happens next, Mark?
Your closing words, and that is it.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. I have two closing words. The first one comes from a fortune cookie I got a few weeks ago that I thought was wise. It said, "We find comfort among those who agree with us, growth among those we don't." The second one is, "To err is human, to R is pirate." Go in
And that-
peace.
I'd love to have a copy of that prayer, by the way. It was a wonderful prayer at the beginning.
I'll send you the whole thing.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, all. Thanks for being here. Great to see your faces.
Good to see you.
See you.
Yeah. Hey, Dolly. How are you?
Good. The witch has got her broom all charged.
Oh, yeah. There you go. I bet. Yeah. What's the weather like there?
Great.
It's a little chilly. It's in the 70s.
Oh, yeah. Well, you and I can't really complain.
No.
Yeah. It was 80 yesterday here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Great to see you.
Happy week. Happy Halloween. Happy everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy chocolate.
Yeah. Definitely chocolate. Love to all.